After a little research and asking around, I made a decision and I bought a ticket. I bought the damn ticket. I was getting on that plane and I was going to find my way forward in the place I always dreamed of seeing. Hey, my name is Stephanie Simmons and I'm completely obsessed with living in a culture of freedom and helping you maneuver your way through the chaos to the calm. As a small city mom of 6, I took my life into my own hands, quit my job, and went all in on my side hustle, creating the freedom to not only make my own schedule, but to make time for the people and things that matter most in life. Working from home, I now have an online business teaching others how to realize their passions, map out their goals in business and in life, and make those goals their new reality. I'm just over here telling it exactly like it is as we dive in on topics like burnout, balancing it all, finding joy, and dreaming up those crazy cool next chapters of your life. Business, mindset, breaking barriers, and showing up for yourself and the people you care about are all things we talk about here. Ready to become the curator of your best life? Lean in, take a listen, and let me challenge you and cheer you on to creating a life you absolutely love. This is the Freedom Culture Podcast. Hey you, welcome back to the Freedom Culture Podcast. This is episode number 2, What a Trip to Paris Pushed Me to Do. In the spring of 2019, I was busy, burnt out, and buying a ticket out of it all. I was nearing the end of May, and around the corner was my 40th birthday. I felt a pull to do something really good for it. I was always one to make a big deal of birthdays. I don't just do that for myself, I do it for anyone else who will let me. For my kids, I always give them a party, as big as we can, whenever we can. We'll invite the whole class if they want to, I don't even care. I love it, and it doesn't have to cost a lot. It could just mean a house full of kids for a couple of noisy hours and grab bags on the way out, or maybe taking a few close friends to jump on trampolines, whatever they want. I want them to feel special because they are. I want them to also be able to give others a special time at their party. I also love to bake, so I always try to make them a cake, when they don't want something like a superhero one from the store or whatever. One other thing that I started doing that they don't even realize is I started writing a card to them, and I don't even give it to them. I have one of those accordion file folder things, and I write the card, and then I put it in there for them to see sometime later in life. Doesn't really matter when, I just want them to read it later. I think it's so important to celebrate another trip around the sun, another year building their character, and for all of us, it's an opportunity to reflect on what we've accomplished and look at the future and all the possibilities that lie ahead. So here I am, about to turn 40, and I was drowning. I'm a mom of 6, 2 are adults already, and 4 of them were under 10 at this time. I was working full-time for a local business, and then I was running my home staging business on the side in my free time. Whatever that was, I don't even know how I was doing it. When I look back, I think, oh my gosh, what was I doing? So overall, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to survive much longer, as I was already feeling the effects of burnout for sure. Although that wasn't anything anyone around me really seemed to talk about at that time I'm not sure why, but I don't recall ever talking about that. So after looking at some options and talking to a travel agent and all that, I decided that I was going to go on a trip alone, somewhere really great, somewhere I always wanted to go, and Paris had been on my mind for a long time. Yes, I am a diehard Sex and the City fan, and yes, I'm single, and even though it's supposed to be one of the most romantic cities in the world, and I would be there alone, I still wanted it. I never thought I would be able to go there at all. It didn't even cross my mind as a possibility in my life until now, when something told me to look into it. Deep down, I had always wanted to see it in person, but I truly didn't ever put it on my physical list of things that I wanted. After a little research and asking around, I made a decision and I bought a ticket. I bought the damn ticket. I was getting on that plane and I was going to find my way forward in the place I always dreamed of seeing. I remember how shocked a lot of people were that I went all alone. Even now, when I tell them the story, it surprises people. I guess I can understand that. A woman traveling alone and that kind of thing, but it just needed to be that way. I pictured myself sitting in cafes, writing, sipping and smiling, and being a total cliche. And my vision of experiencing Paris really didn't include anyone else for whatever reason. I know that as a mom of 6, taking a vacation alone could seem selfish and no doubt did to some onlookers, but I just didn't buy into any of that crap. I earned that damn trip. I worked my ass off. Hell, I'd been hustling on my own since I was 17. I gave my kids all that I could, and there was no way that I was going to feel guilty about doing this for myself, and let's face it, for my sanity. But, of course, I did feel guilty, just a little. I knew that I deserved it, that just because I deserved it doesn't mean my kids didn't. I had every intention on taking them somewhere grand when I was able, but right now, in that moment, I knew that if I didn't take this break, I was going to break. So in a way, I was doing it for them too. After all, moms shouldn't break. We are the backbone, the fixers, the doctors, the schedulers, the drivers, the nurturers, and everything else under the sun that this society puts on us to be. I recently saw the Barbie movie with my 2 daughters, and the one thing that stuck with me that I truly loved was the monologue written by Greta Gerwig for the character Gloria, played by America Ferrera, and I want to share it with you if you haven't heard it. She said, "It is literally impossible to be a woman. You are so beautiful and so smart, and it kills me that you don't think you're good enough. Like we have to always be extraordinary, but somehow we're always doing it wrong. You have to be thin, but not too thin. And you can never say you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy, but also you have to be thin. You have to have money, but you can't ask for money because that's crass. You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to love being a mother, but don't talk about your kids all the damn time. You have to be a career woman, but also always be looking out for other people. You have to answer for men's bad behavior, which is insane, but if you point that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much, or that you threaten other women because you're supposed to be part of the sisterhood. But always stand out and always be grateful. But never forget that the system is rigged, so find a way to acknowledge that, but also always be grateful. You have to never get old, never be rude, never show off, never be selfish, never fall down, never fail, never show fear, never get out of line. It's too hard, it's too contradictory, and nobody gives you a medal or says thank you. And it turns out, in fact, that not only are you doing everything wrong, but also everything is your fault. And it continues on a little more like this, but you definitely get the picture. This hit me hard, with tears welling up in my eyes in the theater. I felt every word of this truth. But then I thought to myself, it's great that this is being acknowledged on the big screen, and I hope that it starts to bring awareness and change to the ridiculous expectations society places on women. But I knew right then in my heart that I was going to be free from this. I knew that I wasn't totally free from it yet, but that I was headed in that direction. So, because back in 2019, breaking just wasn't really a great option for me, I chose to keep me from cracking and get on a 7.5-hour flight from Toronto to Paris and get my shit together. And yes, I'm Canadian, but I don't live in Toronto. I'm about 3 hours west in a small city called Chatham. This place has always been my home, and although I had done some traveling south, I had never been to Europe or crossed an ocean on a plane, so it was exciting indeed. Looking back, it was really fun to be all alone where no one knows your name and you can be whoever you want to be. It's like being a bit invisible. When others' beliefs about you aren't present and you can set everything you are and have been known as aside and just be. I was curious to see who I would show up as. When it feels like no one is watching and you have this small window of time where you sort of get a fresh start, it's amazing how you can surprise yourself. I was creating a new version of myself that I knew was inside of me but just hadn't come out yet. It was also my opportunity to feel like I already am the person I want to be. No one knows me there. I can be a writer in a cafe or a brave girl dancing alone in the middle of a crowd of strangers in a busy Barcelona nightclub. Yep, I did that, and it was awesome. After all, I love writing, and the last 10 years have made me want to write a book, and I share an equal love of dancing. It felt like I could be anything and do anything. Even if I had to return to my life as it was, it definitely didn't matter in that moment. I also recognize that it can be dangerous to travel alone, I understand, but I had the right mentality going in. I was part of a tour group, so at least someone had to account for me, so others could feel better about me going, but I didn't really care about that. I didn't care because I manifested the trip exactly how I assumed it would be. I would be smart and safe and all would be well, and it was. I never once thought otherwise, and that's not blissful ignorance, it was intention. I intended to have a great time, to rediscover what I needed to about myself, my wants, my needs, and I would be safe knowing that I was smart and thoughtful about where I chose to be and never gave any attention to things going wrong because that is not something I wanted to give energy to. As Tony Robbins always says, Where focus goes, energy flows, and it is so, so true. So I was just being careful about what I was focusing on so all my energy could go towards making my trip a great experience, and it truly was. So now you can probably guess what this trip to Paris pushed me to do. Going back to the fact that I was burnt out and I knew it, I had known for a little while that I was going to have to make some kind of change. For me, in hindsight, I knew that it was my job that would have to change. Being an employee, while sometimes fulfilling, was just not for me anymore. Remember, I had my own business on the side, and it was growing, and I felt the pull. But it was scary. How could I leave a job that paid me the highest salary I'd ever made? Mind you, it wasn't the salary I really wanted, nor felt I deserved. But it was an accomplishment for me, and I was grateful for what it had allowed me to do in getting to that point in my life, and in being able to get on the plane. I had been toying with the idea of opening another business as well, but hadn't given it much thought, just was in the back of my mind. Being in Paris and the other places I went on that trip really allowed me to see many things about myself. In the 2 weeks I was in France and Spain, I had realized how much I wanted and needed to have freedom. I wanted to be able to go on a vacation without feeling like I was disappointing my employer or coming back to a pile on my desk that I would have to work hard to catch up on when returning. Ugh. Everything about that in this moment makes me cringe, but at that time just knowing that wasn't enough. I needed to somehow believe that I deserved to be free of that. How could I believe that I could be independent of that when all I was ever taught, or maybe all I was able to hear growing up, was that I needed to get a good job and work there for years and it would provide me with a good life? But what if I didn't just want a good life? Don't get me wrong, I was extremely grateful for everything that I had. Shit, I was in Paris. I had 6 healthy children, I had my own health, a safe place to live, and I was able to have a glimpse in time to realize that I was made for more. This is never a comparison to others. There is no I am meant for more than someone else. It is just that I am meant for more, and I actually believe that we all are. Once you make this realization, it makes it extremely hard to go back to the norm, to the status quo, and you start to have new ideas and attract new opportunities. I really had no clue how I would leave my job. I mean, it really wasn't financially a great idea at all. It felt really scary to quit and only have myself to rely on. No security in knowing your paycheck is coming, but when you really think about it, in any job, you are disposable. They can fire you at any point, or the company could close its doors or downsize or any of that, which all leaves you out of a job. Not trying to be negative, but we give an awful lot to employers for what we feel like is security, but it really is more of a false sense of security. But hey, I'm not against people going to work and earning a good living and helping move a company forward while hopefully reaping some benefits of your own from it. Honestly, I'm not. Heck, I'm an employer right now. I just know that for me, I am meant to be an entrepreneur. I know it, I feel it, and I couldn't hide it anymore. So after some soul searching and some changes at work, I knew that I had to go. I gave my 2 weeks notice and I offered them more time with me if they really needed it to transition someone to take my place, because I really did want to feel good about the decision and I wanted them to be good too. But I was officially leaving. This was scary and I didn't come to this decision easily. After much thought, not only on my trip, but when I returned, I couldn't ignore my intuition any longer. I'll admit that making this decision took guts, and it took a lot more than I had in me at the time, but I mustered up the courage, and I chose to live in the belief that I would be okay. After all, I always survived up until this point. I was alive to prove it, and I had to think that this situation was no different. I knew how to take care of myself and my family. I had the ability to learn quickly what I needed to know and when, and I just had to have faith in myself. Faith that I could make a life for myself doing something that I actually liked, maybe even loved. That is the dream, isn't it? To find work that doesn't feel like work and to love doing it every day. I'll tell you, that is what I'm feeling as I was writing this episode. I was sitting in a Starbucks because for some reason I write really well in any kind of a restaurant. And it doesn't feel like anything close to work. It felt like me just talking to my friends, and I get to do this because Paris was actually a good idea, like the saying says, and I took a chance on myself. Not easy at all, but possible. I just want to say that I know it isn't always super realistic to be able to jump on a plane to Paris, and believe me when I say it took me a long time to pay for it after, but I'm glad I went. It wouldn't have really mattered where I went, Just getting a break from any routine and taking yourself out of your life for a week or two, or a few days even if possible, can have the same effect. We do need to be able to have the break to be able to see things more clearly. From a financial standpoint, I had no business being in Paris at that time, but I saw a little quote that said, "Money will return, time won't." And I knew that it would probably have taken me years to save enough money to pay for that trip. And then, heck, I could have been 50 if the money, of course, hadn't been ended up used for something like a new roof or one of the other 100 things I could have used it to pay for. But if I had waited, I likely would not have gone, and I definitely wouldn't have had the experience that I needed so badly at the time. I'm glad that I went, even when I couldn't afford it. I'm glad that I seized the moment, and I try to do that in other areas of my life too. We never know when today is our last, so shoot your shot, take a chance, follow your intuition, and be brave, friends. I want to share with you one of my favorite quotes by Caroline A. Wanga, where she says, "If you can't be who you are, where you are, change where you are, not who you are." I love this quote because it promotes celebrating your authentic self, and it speaks to finding a place of work that supports who you are and doesn't force you to change that. I think now more than ever, there are opportunities for you to shine and make an amazing living by being exactly who you are in this moment. With everything that you know and all that you've learned, what lights you up so much that you want to share it with others? Are you doing that in the work you do now? If I told you that there is a way for you to do that, would you be curious? If so, stay tuned. There is going to be much more about how you can start to find ways to add freedom into your life in the kind of work that you do and in the things that make up your days. And I can't wait to share some of those things with you, so watch for upcoming episodes. I'm still super excited and grateful that you're here listening to this episode, and I just wanted to pass on that note of gratitude. I just want you to take from this that you don't have to go to Paris, and you don't have to, take weeks and spend all kinds of money and all of that, but take some time out of your daily life, out of your work, especially if you're feeling burnt out like I was. I don't know, honestly, what would have happened to me if I hadn't done what I did. I knew something was wrong. I had acknowledged it, and I wasn't looking at the trip to fix it. I was looking to the trip to allow me some time to make a good decision. The funny thing in hindsight, looking at it, I already knew before I got on that plane that I was going to quit my job. I knew, my intuition was telling me that I needed to go. It just wasn't the place for me anymore, and it had no reflection on them. It was me. I was growing. I was changing. I was ready for expansion. And yes, there are lots of times and instances where your workplace can be that for you, can allow you to expand and grow. But I didn't see that as a possibility in the way that I wanted to do it. That wasn't a fit there. And I knew that I wanted to try something different, and I was being pulled to create something. And it turned out that the creation was another business, which really I honestly didn't even plan until after I'd already given my notice. I started to look into things a little further, and then a few months after actually quitting is when we opened our doors. And it was an exciting time, but definitely one that I don't foresee would have happened had I not taken that break to really figure out what I needed in that time and how I was going to do it. I had no idea how I was going to survive without the paycheck. Please believe me, I did not have any savings, not a cent. I mean, not a cent. I didn't have anything. I had no business going on that trip to Paris, but thank goodness for a line of credit. That's what I used, and I put it on there, and I said, you know what? I'll worry about this later. Right now, I need to take care of me, and I want this. And there's a little bit of a dangerous thing. When I want something, and I set my intention on it, oh, you better believe I'm going to get it. But that's just me. And had I waited to try and find the money or save the money, there's no way I would have went, and I really needed it. So I'm so happy that I went, and I want that for you too. Anywhere that you want to go, if you need a break, I want to encourage you to try and find it. And the funny thing is, when you start to look for it, and you start to put your intention towards what you want, opportunities start to come your way. And if you don't believe me, then just try it. Just set your intention, say, this is what I want. You don't even have to tell anyone, but write it down. Really write out, explain it, like what you want, what do you want it to look like, what do you want it to feel like, and start to move yourself towards that. So if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed with work and I really want to start my own business, if that's you, then I definitely want you to look for future episodes. There are some exciting things coming up in the future around that whole concept. So there are some resources, though, that you can currently take a look at. One that's really great is Amy Porterfield's book called 2 Weeks Notice. It's a great book, and it kind of gives you a little bit of a roadmap. I'm not suggesting that everyone go out and quit their job. Please know this. Okay, be intentional with what you want. Do it for yourself. You know, if that's something that you really want, then do it. If you are scared and you don't have a plan, you might still do it. I didn't have a plan. I was terrified. I believed in myself. I knew that I would take care of myself no matter what I had to do. And to be honest, at that time, quitting that job, I knew I could go get another job if I had to, but that was a last resort. And to be honest, I never thought about it. I never thought about actually having to go get another job. It was just in the back of my mind, like as a backup. But I never gave it any energy or intention. I knew that I was going to start something and I was going to make it work. And so far, so good. And I'm doing the same thing with this podcast. I love this. I really feel like this is where I belong right now. But it's just one piece to a much larger picture for me. I will share some of that intention with you, but I intend to create a platform to help people live in a culture of freedom. And that involves many things. So workshops, courses, some coaching as it comes up if that's what's needed or what works out. So watch for things coming in the future. I really hope to be able to work with some of you and help you to create a life you love and do work that you love. That's my intention. And if your intention is to create a culture of freedom in your life, then you're still in the right place. So hang in there with me. I can't wait to talk to you on the next episode. Bye for now. Yes, you just made it to the end of another episode of the Freedom Culture Podcast, and I'm so happy that you did. My goal with each episode is always to offer some type of inspiration for you in your life and your work. Thanks for tuning in, and if you found the show helpful or you're looking for any other resources mentioned in this episode, just hop on over to my website at stephaniesimmons.co and sign up. That way you can get notified when there's new episodes, or you can follow me over on Instagram at stephaniesimmons.co and just simply send me a direct message there with the word podcast to stay in the loop. Again, thank you so much for joining me, and I will catch you next time on the Freedom Culture Podcast.